We no. I could hit.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the special meeting of the Measure U Oversight Committee to order. And we need a roll call.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Committee Member Darwin?
Here.
Committee Member Clark?
Here.
Committee Member Temez?
Here.
Committee Member Chenault?
Here.
Vice Chair Cortez de Pavon?
Here.
Chairwoman Cosmo?
Here.
And we'll let the record reflect that Vice Chair is participating via Zoom.
I don't. The flag. Right. Mary Ann, would you like to lead? Is there a flag? Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before I read the communications from the public.
Yes, sure.
Okay, anyone who wishes to address the Oversight Committee regarding items on the agenda and not on the agenda.
Recording
may
in
do so at
progress.
this time. Public comments are temporarily limited to 2 minutes. Please state your name and chairperson calls the public. When you are recognized, you may proceed with your comments. The Oversight Committee is prohibited from taking actions or discussing any item not appearing on the agenda. A member of the Oversight Committee itself may take action to direct staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. I know we do have one in-person comment, and John Paul, do we have any e-comments, Zoom or telephone?
No, Chair, not at this time. There is one participant via Zoom, so I'd like to, if you'd like, I can call out for Zoom participation on e-comments. Okay. If there's anyone on the Zoom call that would like to talk for tonight's Measure U meeting, now is the time. You could raise your hand and I'll unmute you. If there's anyone, and I'm seeing another person join, if there's anyone on the Zoom call that would like to speak, now is the time for public comment. And we'll give you just a few moments to raise your hand. Seeing none, Chair, we have no Zoom comments.
I don't know, can they?
Yes, yeah,
I know.
we're blue lighted.
I see Sarah. Okay, may I call on Pat Gregory?
Yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Pat Gregory, Madam Chairman. I believe that the police and fire certainly deserve our support, which is why we all passed Measure U. If the MOU at hand enhances public safety and encourages more boots on the ground, then the answer is yes. But I'd like you to consider these facts. The city received $10 million in COVID aid from the federal government. Can we use some of those funds to pay for the COVID payments? The recent audit, and I'm not sure if the Measure U committee has reviewed it, but it shows that $4 million of Measure U money was used for wages, for police wages, but there are no additional officers. The audit also shows an additional $2 million in Measure U money was transferred to the general fund under your watch. And the audit also shows that the city added 4 administration officers or employees, but they added no police officers. The current spending of Measure U by the city does not seem in line with the restrictions placed on Measure U. Yes, we need to support the police by spending general fund money and using Measure U money for additional boots on the ground as promised. Measure U should not be a slush fund to cover, general fund expenses. The question is, why aren't these expenses in the MOU paid for by the general fund? There's sufficient money. There was more money from COVID. There's sufficient money to pay for it. I think Measure U is being overlooked and the money is not being used properly. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other public comments? In-person comments?
There's no other speaker
All
cards.
right, thank you. Okay, so we will move to item 5A, discussion regarding the use of measuring funds to fund wages, benefits, and deferred compensation related to memorandums of understanding, MOUs, for police and fire sworn employees to encourage employee retention and attraction.
So thank you, Chair. Good to see all the members of the committee. I'm Chris Opez, City Manager for the City of Hemet. I would like to introduce or have the two chiefs introduce themselves so that everybody can familiarize themselves with who they are. So we'll start with Chief Poost.
Hi, I'm Chief Eddie Poost. I actually started my career here over 25 years ago, so it's a pleasure being here and be able to help out with the city moving forward as the chief.
Good afternoon, Eddie Sell. 30 years in the fire service, new to the city of Hemet, but very happy to be part of a great community and public safety partners and all of our executive team in the city. So thank you.
It's really honored to have both chiefs here, and they both play a critical role here in the city. So we're happy to have them be a part of the conversation as well. With that being said, committee members, happy to see everybody in person. It's been a while since we physically met in person, so it's good to see everybody. I know we're getting back into the swing of meeting regularly in person, so it's a nice change for us. So I wanted to talk about a few things today. As standard practice for us as city staff, we integrate everything that we do back to the city's adopted strategic plan, which was adopted by the council. So for us, the item of conversation for today aligns with the strategic plan in three different areas. Quality of life, which is to increase public safety visibility and response. Two, partnership and collaboration, develop concepts and programs that enhance quality of life services. And then three, community engagement, deliver messaging to the community that connects, is consistent and relevant. And so based on these three priority goals, we have 5 for the city of Hemet. You can see that in certain areas within quality of life, we've put in action items of adding police officers to the department, or adding fire prevention, or so on and so forth. Particularly on the community engagement side, there are things that the chief is leading in the police department that we benefit by having additional officers here with the city of Hemet. In addition to that, for instance, the ROCKS enhancement does require additional sworn personnel to oversee some of those functions. So these are the areas by which they do touch on the city's strategic plan. So today's discussion, item 5A, this is a discussion relating and regarding the use of Measure U funds to fund wages, benefits, and deferred compensation related to memorandums of understandings, MOU, for police and fire sworn employees, encourage employee retention and attraction. And so the recommended action for the committee today is it's respectfully recommended that the Measure U Citizen Oversight Committee discuss the use of Measure U funds to fund wages, benefits, and deferred compensation for police and fire sworn employees, including the costs for memorandums of understandings for the Hemet Police Officers Association, HPOA, and other public safety bargaining groups, and whether it is in line with resolutions 4703 and 4731. So you'll see this slide twice in this presentation, but we wanted to make sure that the committee was familiar with the 3 questions that we are seeking the committee's input on. The first item, are wages, benefits, and deferred compensation eligible expenses under resolutions 4731 and 4703 for public safety employees? Question number 2, is the use of $1.7 million of Measure U funds for wages, benefits, and deferred compensation for the duration of the 3-year MOU term to encourage retention and attraction of new officers to the Hemet Police Department in line with resolutions 4703, 4731, and ordinance 1918? And then the third question is, does the committee authorize the chair and vice chair to sign a letter affirming the findings in questions 1 and 2 on behalf of the Measure U Oversight Committee to the Hemet City Council. So those are the 3 questions that we're looking for input and feedback on regarding this specific question at hand from the Measure U Oversight Committee. So by way of background, for those that have been on the committee before, it is standard practice that I include the basis of the Oversight Committee and the roles and responsibilities of the Oversight Committee. And so here we're laying the groundwork as to why we're here, why the committee is here, and why we are asking the committee's feedback on this specific question. So Ordinance 1918 clearly articulates the role and responsibility of the Measure U Oversight Committee. So Ordinance 1918, a Citizens Oversight Committee is hereby established to independently review and advise upon the city's expenditure of proceeds generated by the transactions and use tax. Within that, the scope and the responsibilities of the Measure U Oversight Committee are embedded here. The committee shall meet at least twice each calendar year and more frequently if necessary to discharge the responsibilities of the committee. The Citizens Oversight Committee shall annually review and report on 1, the city's proposed and actual expenditure of proceeds generated by the transaction and use tax, and 2, the independent annual audit required under this article. So those of you that received my email, I believe it was a week and a half ago, I did send the committee a copy of the annual comprehensive financial report, which the committee is scheduled to review next Monday. Just by way of processes, the city council needed to receive and file that audit before it would be brought to the Oversight Committee. So the meeting that we have set up next week is the first opportunity that we have for the committee to review not only the audit, but also to something called an agreed upon procedures review, which is a higher level of review and done by a separate auditor. So the committee has multiple auditors looking at the same information to confirm what's in that document. So these 2 items are the critical role of what the Measure U Oversight Committee is tasked with. So this is the complete scope and role of the Measure U Oversight Committee. So resolutions 4703 and 4731. And just by way of background, these items were included for the entire Oversight Committee. We have copies of them here, as well as they were included in the agenda backup. So you do have hard copies here, and they were also included in the agenda backup. So within resolutions 47 and 4703 and 4731, and I'm just going to read this verbatim. The city council shall, as part of the city's normal budget process, annually prepare and adopt an expenditure plan for enhancing public safety services within the city, including application of the tax proceeds. The expenditure plan shall be submitted to the Citizens Oversight Committee required by Measure U for their review and comment prior to the city council's consideration and adoption of the expenditure plan. The expenditure plan shall be consistent with the requirements of this resolution, including but not limited to the following. Tax proceeds shall be used exclusively to pay for costs associated with the Citizens Oversight Committee, the independent audit, and funding police protection and crime suppression services, fire protection and suppression services, and 911 paramedic services within the city. The proceeds of the tax may be expended on any and all regular and special expenses incurred for the operation and the provision of public safety services within the city, and in response to mutual and automatic aid agreements, including but not limited to wages, benefits, and deferred compensation for police and fire personnel, and the pro rata shares of such costs for other city personnel that support the police and fire services within the city. The purchase, operation, and maintenance of vehicles and equipment, including repairs, fuel and maintenance, the operation, maintenance, repair, and retrofitting of existing property, buildings, improvements, and other facilities necessary for police or fire purposes, risk management, and legal services in defense of claims and legal actions against the city and public safety personnel, training, licensing, and certification of police and fire personnel, and for utilizing contractors, subcontractors, consultants, and professional services directly related to enhancing police and fire services. That each fiscal year, the tax proceeds shall be allocated 2/3 of the City of Hemet Police Department and 1/3 to the Hemet City of Hemet Fire Department. So I should add here that the voters of the City of Hemet approved a general tax. That's what Measure U was, meaning that funding, that general tax, could be used for any lawful city purpose. The City Council, by resolution, chose to restrict or limit what Measure U could be used for. So it's a self-imposed limitation that the city placed on itself, that the City Council placed on itself, and that's a resolution 4703 and 4731. By law, by California state law, Measure U is a general tax, meaning that it could be used for any lawful purpose by the City of Hemet. The City Council just chose to restrict that for police and fire suppression services, public safety in the City of Hemet. So now we'll get into some of the content of the item before you. So MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, is a collective bargaining agreement between a respective union or association and an agency, and in this case, it's the City of Hemet. This agreement is between the City of Hemet and the Hemet Police Officers Association, HPOA, which is the union association that represents certain police department employees classifications, which are listed below: police corporal, police officer, and police investigator. There will be a time where we will bring back additional conversations related to the Hemet Police Management Association or the Hemet Firefighters Association. But for this item in particular, what we'll be discussing today is strictly just for the Hemet Police Officers Association. So within the MOU, and this is all subject to closed session discussions, so I can't give any details about the specifics about how the city got to this point, but in terms of general discussions and concepts, the proposed increases within the MOU, which will be made public once the agenda is posted, include the following: wage increases in the following areas to help retain officers and remain competitive. So 1A, financial incentives for tenure as a police officer to encourage experienced officers to remain with the City of Hemet, as well as encourage officers that have experience with other agencies to come to the City of Hemet. Item 1B, increases to base compensation to encourage officer retention, remaining keeping police officers with the City of Hemet, and remain competitive with neighboring agencies. Item 1C, compensation incentives for bilingual pay to encourage a diverse workforce. Obviously, we've got a diverse community, so it's important that our officers are able to literally communicate with the public they serve. Item 1D, PERS increases for wage increases. So obviously the respective costs associated with higher salaries, higher pay, there's a corresponding increase to the PERS side of it, which obviously will be included as a cost that the city will need to budget for. In addition to that, there are benefit increases in the following areas. Item 2A, health insurance employer contributions to increase the city's benefits package. So when we talk about an entire compensation package for any employee, we have to look at not only the wages, but also the health insurance employer contributions that help offset the costs that an employee might have to pay out of pocket. And then item 3, deferred compensation incentives to attract new officers. So deferred compensation is compensation usually in the form of a match. So if an employee is contributing, let's say $200 per month to deferred compensation that they're able to pull for once they retire, the city would be able to match that up to a certain limitation. So that's what we've been discussing with the council in closed session. We've received authorization and direction to be able to create this MOU, and we've been able to tentatively agree with the Hemet Police Officers Association on these items. It is important, I should note, we appreciate the committee's willingness to meet with such a quick turnaround time, because the council is really hoping to get the input from the committee so that we are able to meet a deadline of the first council meeting in March to be able to have the council publicly vote on these proposed MOUs. The financial component of this specific MOU related to the Hemet Police Officers Association, in order to fund the cost of the proposed MOU, it is proposed to utilize approximately $1.7 million of Measure U funds for the duration of the MOU term, which is scheduled to run from July 1, 2021 to July of 2024. So breaking up the 1.7 million over the course of 3 years, this equates to approximately $566,000 of Measure U funds per year on average for the next 3 years. Some of the items within the MOU make it so that it's not going to be that exact dollar amount for the first year, the second year, or the third year. This is just to help provide some context of the dollar amount that we're talking through July 2024. So again, going back to the key questions for the committee, and this is where the council would like to get the input from the Oversight Committee. The first question, are wages, benefits, and deferred compensation eligible expenses under resolutions 4731, 4703 for public safety employees, and in particular, the Hemet Police Officers Association? 2, is the use of $1.7 million of Measure U funds for wages, benefits, and deferred compensation for the duration of the 3-year MOU term to encourage retention and attraction of new officers of the Hemet Police Department in line with resolutions 4703, 4731, and ordinance 1918? And then finally, number 3, does the committee authorize the chair and vice chair to sign a letter affirming the findings from questions 1 and 2 on behalf of the Measure U Oversight Committee to the Hemet City Council? So with that being said, that concludes the presentation that we have lined up for the Oversight Committee. We're happy to field any questions or comments from the committee chair. So thank you.
Okay, do any of the members have any comments or questions, including Sarah? I think she's still on there, correct?
Yeah.
Oh, I see now. Okay.
I have comments, not necessarily a question. I totally support police, just like a member behind me suggested. I've sat on bargaining tables for unions, for employees, and I know that you try to, as a union, you try to get as much as you can. So I guess one of the first questions I have is there any leeway at all if we were to give a portion of that, or is it all or nothing?
So in terms of what we're seeking for from the committee is really the discussion related to, is this in line with resolution 4731 and 4703? That information in and of itself will be provided to the council. The committee could certainly provide additional feedback. And deferred compensation eligible expenses under resolutions 4731 and 4703 for public safety employees. If we go back to the original scope of what the Oversight Committee is tasked with, that's the scope right there to make sure that any expenses that are brought forward as proposed expenditures are in line with those resolutions. That's what the committee exists for.
Okay, so I went back and I did a little research on the full Measure U. I mean, I kind of remember when we passed the tax and all that, but I saw Bonnie Wright was the mayor at the time, and her message to the community was that we were going to put more boots on the ground, and that was the commitment. And we know that with more boots on the ground, we have less crime. We know we have less traffic accidents, because as a nurse, that's a big thing for me in the emergency room. So in this, resolutions that we discussed earlier, there is supposed to be a $1.2 officer per 1,000 citizen ratio. So can you tell us how we're doing with that? Where are we at with that? Are we meeting the quota? Do we have 1.2 officers per 1,000 citizens? I'm not sure who to ask the question to.
I'll put it differently, Chief.
Okay, yeah, I'll answer that. And realistically, to look at that number, even with the funding we have, it's impossible due to the costs of what it is for sworn. What we've done innovatively is we've implemented community service officers that do the same thing that officers do to free up officers' time to get them out there, because right now we're probably at 0.8 per 1,000. And that's just on the top of my head. But realistically, to get to 1.2, that would be difficult just looking at the funding, because I know you're referring to at one point there was 108 officers requested and 103. With what the funding with Measure U and general fund that we bring in now with the projected revenues, that would be impossible.
So with, you know, how many officers do we have right now that we could say we have, you know, like, I don't know, I'm sure people come and join and then they leave. And so I'm sure the numbers are ebbing and flowing.
Yeah, there's
But where are we today versus when we passed the measure, you know, as far as officers are concerned?
we start off at 69. As of today, we are at 72 sworn
Is that employed or budgeted?
employees. We're
Okay.
budgeted at 78, based on the strategic plan, the budget of 2021-22. So as you mentioned, through retirements and resignations, it's difficult to keep up with that. So that's exactly where we're at today. I know that there was, as projected back in 2016-17, that we're looking at 108, and that number fluctuated to 103. I see two different flyers, but we've never.
But we can agree that we should at least have over 100, correct?
So let me jump in on something just to provide some background on Measure U. And I know Suzanne and I know Chairwoman as well as Committee Member Clark will remember this. When Measure U was adopted by the voters, the city actually had a $5.5 million deficit in its budget. And so part of what was communicated to the public was the desire to add new officers. But the reality of it was that the fiscal year 15-16 budget was adopted with a $5.5 million deficit. So really, no one was looking at how do you rectify the $5.5 million deficit, because that was a critical problem. Measure U was never intended to shore up that gap. So the reality that ended up happening was a promise of more enhanced officers, levels of public safety, but no one was following the audited statements of the city of Hemet, because Measure U was never presented to the community as a solution to the city's financial problems. If you look at the city's budget, and this is no disparagement on public safety, the operation runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. By its nature, it's going to be the biggest cost. So in order to alleviate the $5.5 million that was in that budget, the only way to alleviate that issue was to reduce expenditures. That's, there are only two ways to solve, the budget problem: increase your revenues or you reduce your expenditures. And from what I can look at the historical documents of the city, there's probably at least a 7-year cycle of using reserves to fund ongoing operations. So part of the difficult conversations that I've brought to the table with the Oversight Committee has been a political challenge of communicating promises to the community that didn't reconcile with the actual financial condition of the city. So that's where you find this promise of 100 officers, 1.2 officers, which financially and fiscally was impossible. And so if you look at some of the backup and agenda items from whether it's 2021 or 2020, we've laid that out to the Oversight Committee to get this understanding that at some point, we had to come face to face with the reality of, hey, this promise to the community was not going to come to terms, because how do you rectify the general fund deficit without the use of Measure U to solve that? You got to cut expenses. So that was a difficult reality that most of the public didn't really understand that nuance, because it wasn't communicated that way. Obviously before my time, before Lorena's time, but the first thing that I looked at when I was looking at the financial reports is, this is fiscally impossible. You can't do this.
I think one of the things that I noticed in reading through the resolutions is they keep using the word enhancing. We're enhancing, we're going to use the money for public safety enhancement. 100% of the tax proceeds to enhancing public safety. And, one of the benefits of being a nurse in this community is that, I have a long time history with police officers and fire, and, we've worked side by side for many years. And so it's really nice to be able to have their perspective. So I guess one of the things that, another thing that stood out here is that it talks about there's a need to fund anti-drug and gang teams. And I don't know where we're at on that. So maybe you can also help me understand, have we met the goal? Are we where we should be optimally to your satisfaction, to have the gang and the anti-drug teams built up?
That's one of our strategic plans, and the budget is our GTF, our game task force, which we do supervise and assign one person, as well as we have CHP and Sheriff's Department, one from Hemet Station, one from San Luis Station assigned to that. We also are involved with our gang impact team, which is housed in the city of Hemet. So we are moving forward with those specific.
So do I hear you saying that you're going to hire and beef up these teams, or, is there a deficit, or are you where you want to be in building those teams at this time?
With those teams, we're where we should be. Now, there's other teams that we're trying to enhance, or and specific teams. Our ROCKS team is restored, our community strategy team. They deal with the homelessness, the nuisance. They're out there daily. Thing is, they're out there daily for 4 days a week, and then they'll do an offshoot where they'll work at Tuesday through Friday, or Monday through Thursday, sometimes a Wednesday through Saturday. But during the 3 days that they're off, things just pile up and issues become present with business owners and in certain areas. So what we are doing as part of the strategic goal is to make that a 7-day team. So that's what we're doing with the hire, to expand that team. And the same with traffic. Traffic, we run 5 days a week. We have worse traffic on the weekends. Why aren't we running them on the weekends? So that's the next goal, is to enhance that with more personnel, to expand that to 7 days a week, to have traffic out on Florida Avenue, Sanderson, Stetson, those main areas where we have many issues. So those are goals that we are slowly but surely enhancing and adding to those specific teams. So that is happening as we hire more. Good news is, with solidification of the MOU, and as we move forward, more people are attracted by coming over here. And we're still going to get retirements, still going to get resignations, but I have a positive outlook. But that's just me, is what I see occurring in different counties, that people are moving out here towards Oversight County, which will
They
help
are,
us.
because
Yeah.
they are getting away from the LA district attorney, and they're also getting away from the LA mandates of vaccination, being forced. But, and I agree, that's a really good thing. In order to beef up the teams that you just mentioned, the ROCKS and the traffic to the weekends, and going from 4 to 7 days for ROCKS, is what's like the holdup at that point? Is it a financial impact, or is we just haven't hired yet, and you
Just-
have all the money in place to expand the team?
It's a personal. It's just a personnel. We have the money as budgeted in this last year's budget. So we are there with the budget. We increased a supervisor for the walks team so that we have supervision throughout the week, 7 days a week. And with the traffic, it's just hiring those bodies to fulfill those motorcycles.
Good news. Mary Ann, do you have any questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Are you?
No, go ahead, go ahead. It's a
I don't wanna
group
forget
conversation.
Sarah. I don't wanna forget Sarah.
I can always jump back in there.
No, what I noticed though wasn't brought up, and I know it sounds like you keep track, but we also just hired CityNet. So that does help our homeless. You've heard of that, right? CityNet. Oh yeah, we spent a lot of money on that recently. And San Jacinto also has the same program. But what I learned is that San Jacinto, they went with the B program and we went with the A program. So they don't offer housing. They just offer solutions to the homeless and programs to the homeless. However, Hemet paid a little bit more and we offer housing. And trying to get them off the streets. So there is a whole nother program out in Hemet now to help the police force and the ROC program to get those homeless into programs and to get them off the streets. That was a considerable amount of money that really wasn't even, I'm not exactly sure the amount. I want to say it was over
About 1.2 million.
something 2 million that we paid. I don't feel that that was transparent enough. You know, we just went in and said, oh, we hired CityNet, and we all went, oh, okay, and we listened to them talk, and then we just paid the money. I don't really feel that anybody had any other say in that. I don't exactly know where that money came from, if it came from Measure U or if it came from the general fund. The thing is that with the Measure U, and if I understood you correctly, Chris, is that you needed to use some of that Measure U funding to balance the budget before we could go into any hiring or use that money for anything else, if that's what I understood, because you were saying that we were at a deficit when all these promises were being made, but yet Measure U has done nothing but bring in more money and more money in the last 3 to 4 years. It's made more money. It's not just coming in at 10 million like we guesstimated originally. It's brought in more, up to 12. I think at the last I looked, 12.5. So we're bringing in more money, and yet I don't feel that we're being shown that we should also, just because it's in the general fund, because we didn't put it in its own bank account, that it should be used to bail out the city. I mean, I think it should be, the money should be used primarily for what it was intended to be used for. And I really don't, I understand that, you know, we're looking at that and we're trying to, you know, help them out. But I really think that we really should be more transparent on where the Measure U money is going. I don't see it. I go to all the city council meetings. I'm there every 2 weeks. I sit in on all that. You guys know I talk a lot, but I just don't, I mean, you know, has this MOU already been arranged, agreed upon between the city and the police?
There's a tentative agreement. The
So
city council will need to vote for it in open session.
Okay, and then is there a reason it wasn't provided to us before this agreement?
The tentative agreement and the details for it hasn't been finalized yet.
Okay, all right.
So there's a legal component of getting everything
Right,
together, and that's
Right.
not completed yet.
I was also under the belief, and I thought, and I could have heard it wrong, that it was already voted on, that it had already been voted on.
Maybe by the employees on the POA side, but the city council has not voted on that.
I guess I have, I guess, you know, I'm looking at the numbers that were provided. We had 69 officers in 2016, it's 2022. We've only added 3 officers with all the Measure U money that's come in. I guess, I mean, as much as I fully support our police and I would like to just write the check and go, here you go. I'm concerned about the average citizen. You know, whenever they say, well, you guys were on Measure U all this time And we've only added 3 officers, and what are you doing with the money? Like, we didn't really, we voted because they kept telling us that you're going to increase, police officers, and you were going to increase, public safety. And then we say, oh, we have only added 3. I guess, this is going to expire down the road. It's a 10-year measure. And when that happens, and they look at what we've done with the money, are they going to re-vote again? Or are they going to be angry and say, oh, heck no, I'll never vote for that again because you didn't do with the funding what you told us you were going to do with the funding. So I'm a little concerned about that.
And Chief Bruce, I know it's very challenging to hire police officers now, and it's not just him, it's, well, at least throughout California, and I'm sure other states too. But I believe you said you have hired a number of non-safety CSOs that are now doing the work, some of the duties of police officers. Of course, they can't do arrest and search and seizure, but
That's to supplement a lot of, that's to free up our officers to actually do police work, to simplify that. So
What do you call them? I'm sorry, what do you call them?
community service officers.
Okay.
And they do everything except powers to arrest, obviously drive black and white cars with the lights and sirens, things like that. They handle all pass calls. They assist with bookings and transport to the jails, which frees up our officers to actually be out there in the field. So those are, that's what's important. And then keep in mind too, remember during COVID, we kind of put a freeze, and honestly, we had no idea what to expect. And that was a legitimate time to say, hey, wait, we got to stop. We were about to hire 4 officers laterals at that time that we had to put on hold. We didn't expect the outcome that happened with revenues coming in higher to actually happen that way. We began our recruitment again of that year in November. Well, that just gets the ball going. It takes a long time to hire somebody. That includes putting the recruitment out.
How long does that take, Chief?
Just the recruitment part, at least 3 months, 2 to 3 months, 3 months, and 2 months is quick. 3 months, I'm talking fast. It used to be 6 months, but we've expedited things a lot faster. So 3 months to get a lateral officer hired here and into training. Now, the difference between lateral and entry level, lateral officers, we train them in our processes, Riverside County, what we do for our city, rather than entry level. And those the training is reduced. It can be reduced up to a month and a half rather than 4.5, 5 months of training. And nowadays, to be honest with you, with all the new technology, it takes a new training after the academy of 6 months. So it's probably about 4 to 5 months to get them hired, 6 months in the academy, and then another 6 months to be a lone police officer by himself conducting police work.
Sounds like an ER nurse.
Yeah, it's a lot of work,
Yeah.
and we have to, we've changed a lot of things that we've done in the past. This is a learning environment. We have to make sure that if they succeed, we succeed. So it's a real learning environment for 6 months. Some people learn at different paces, so it just depends. So it could take 1.5 years for an entry level, and lateral anywhere from 4 months, and they're on their own.
Chair, I wanted to add something too, because I think that was a really good question. And there's so many different components to that. And I wanted to maybe set the stage for the chief to chime in on some of these things. So I think if you look at the numbers, yeah, you're going to say, oh, yeah, we've only been able to bring on 3. But I really want to take this into a larger context. Look at the way our police officers generally are viewed by society. So you've got some, challenges with how society views police officers. So that's a challenge. The second one is you've got the same climate, and so you've got people that our police officers are always being video recorded, not only by themselves but others, and so they're under an intense amount of scrutiny. And so there's a limited number of officers that come in, and the chief probably has better numbers than I do. But for every 100 applicants that come through, there's probably a handful of them that are candidates that might be a good fit for the city. And so during this time, you're going to have a lot of people that fall off during that process. So with not only the political climate of what exists for someone to be a police officer, the constant scrutiny that they're under, and the fact that almost every other police agency in the state of California is hiring, including the sheriff, including the district attorney, including every other city, you've set up a recipe for having fewer numbers of people that are wanting to take on that job. So just by the very fact of the reality of what we have today, it's becoming even more difficult to recruit and attract officers. So Chief, maybe you can touch on a couple of those.
I mean, obviously, it's a great profession, but the desire to become a law enforcement officer nowadays, it's not something that you see the younger generation moving towards. As the city manager explained, in the past, when we used to recruit, we would recruit for entry level, let's say, we'd have up to 200 applicants. And then after the applicant process, we'd have a physical agility test. We'd at least have 150 show up there. And after the 150, we had a written test, or written test prior. Those who passed with 150. Physical agility, we have probably 100 people that show up there. And it dwindled down where we had about 20 people that are ready to go after oral exams that we would put in backgrounds, and we lose half of those in backgrounds. We put them in the academy, 4 of them, maybe 2 make it, maybe 1 make it through the training program here. We have never lowered our standards across the board with hiring. I mean, obviously we don't want to, there's a lot of liability, but what we're seeing now is we're getting 100 applicants. What's interesting is with written exam, 50 show up, 50 just show up, no call. Oral exam or PT, we get like 10 people make it. We set up 10 interviews for oral exams and no one even calls. We get 3 or 4 people that show up. So it's like a waste of time. Sometimes I feel, just because I don't know if it's generational or what. I don't know if you see it in your different professions, but it's just different. We have an 8-hour block of doing interviews, and then they're sporadic because people just don't call or they don't show up. So it's changed. And after that, so what we'll have too, sometimes we go with all the hiring process that we've gone through, we may not end up with anybody at the end of it. So it's really difficult. We've done really good with our CSOs. Now I'm going to jump over to that, where it's a difficult profession, but they've learned the process that we have here. We see their work ethic, and we've been very successful to hiring those internally as a promotion into law enforcement. They go to the academy, they come back, they understand, they know the streets of Hemet, they understand, they know how to talk on the radio, which is, it's to somebody else that's new, it's like, oh my God, they know our process, they know how to walk through the station because they're not lost. I mean, there's a lot of things in just the technology. So we're able to, hire these people, our CSOs, which is probably our best recruitment grounds is internally for our department. Laterally, we do great when we hire somebody. And usually we're a busy city, and the people that want to come here, they're active, proactive. So they're out there and they enjoy this type of environment. Unfortunately, we are, and that's the type of environment we have. So in a sense, it is difficult. In the entry level, it's so difficult to hire, but we're still, it's like a revolving door. Trust me, every year I want to hit that mark. I have 70 positions. I think I will do it this year. That's my hope, because I have these programs. I don't want to fail. I say this all the time to my city manager. We're not in the business to fail. We made these promises with Measure U. I was here when this was voted in, and this is a goal. We have to change that perception of Hemet. We have to change the way we do business in Hemet, and we have to make sure that we could get rid of the sunset clause for Measure U. For me, it's very important, and we have till 2027 to make this happen, and that's where we're at.
Chief, could you just briefly touch on the former military? I know that used to be one of the largest pools for police officers, but I think that's changed now.
Yeah, I'd say it's 50-50. What we get military, this is a paramilitary environment in the law enforcement, so we would get a lot of people that were left the military would come over to law enforcement. It still happens. I'd say it's 50-50. But we don't see, I mean, it's just all around it. We don't see a lot of people wanting to jump into this profession right now. And as the city manager said, there's a lot of things that are going on nationwide. And it's just unfortunate because it's a great profession. I'll sit here and tell you that all day for the rest of my life, but it's unfortunate that that's part of it. The pendulum swings, and I think it's coming back. You know, we do see promises, and we're dealing with new laws, you know, within our own state, which are frustrating to our officers as well. So you got to understand, our officers are trained. Our officers experience a lot in such a short period of time, so they have an opportunity to go wherever they want. And now this generation, if you want, and I always say this, you want to, if you want to learn how to surf or be a surfer, you go work in Oceanside and surf during your days off, or you want to snowboard, you could go work in Tahoe. I mean, you're very well trained, you're experienced, you could go anywhere. I keep in touch with officers that either moved on somewhere else and they're doing great over there. We're trying to stop that is what we're trying to do. We don't want, we train these guys, we invest so much in these guys and gals that we want to keep them here. I'd love for them to have the opportunity to sit in my seat. But unfortunately, sometimes they decide they want to go somewhere else and they're successful there. So the biggest thing that we've had conversation is stop the bleeding. Retention and recruitment is one of the biggest factors right now in all of law enforcement. It's just not Hemet. People resign and move other places in every department. I have meetings with my chiefs once a month, with all the other chiefs in the county and the sheriff. They have the same issues. So it's not just Hemet. It's statewide, nationwide.
And I agree with both of you. I mean, just by the nature of politics, it's very difficult to even want to be, a police officer in this day and age. Of course, I think we all want to make a good wage, and we all want to support those who are putting their lives on the line every day to make a good wage. But there are other things also that need to be looked at that makes a happy employee. It's not just going to be your wage, because like, you said, you could go, if you want to be a surfer, you're just going to go live and work at the beach. But your culture, how your police, the culture is of your location, of your agency, how your leadership is, how your equipment is. I mean, as a nurse in the ER, if I can't find a wheelchair and a thermometer and I can't do the job with my basic needs, it becomes a frustration. I have to take care of my patients. So, in talking with people, now, of course, Measure U covers all of that. It covers all of the equipment. But let me ask you, like, your cars. How often are you turning your cars around? Because, I'm thinking of like what Measure U money should be doing. So this is why I'm asking the question. Like, what is your oldest car right now, or your newest car in use right now by your officers?
Okay, that's a whole different animal right there, and I'll explain this too. We are very fortunate as a big recruiting team. We have assigned vehicles. Okay, assigned vehicles. We have cars, and I'll tell you right now that are 2007 Crown Vics, and now they're time to get rid of because they're not making parts, and we're running out of ordering those parts. We've got authority by the approved by city council to purchase vehicles. So the only issue right now is getting them in because either the chips or just the turnaround time is so long. So that's a big recruitment tool, is having those assigned vehicles. The benefits for us is when our officers are ready to go, when it's time to go, they're handling calls prior to their start of shift. You see more cars on the street. These cars last a long time. We have cars that are still approved for code 3, that's lights and sirens, that can go a certain speed limit, and they have 150,000 miles on it. That's unheard of. Usually cars, they run 24/7, 7 days a week, at other agencies, large agencies. So these cars only last 3 or 4 years. I have cars from 2007, which got us through that recession, which was great, but we also lost a third of our officers at that point. But we're doing well now. Right now, as we got approved these last vehicles, this budget, I think we have 12 cars coming. They're coming in sporadically. But that would fulfill what we need to do. Obviously, this next budget, we'll look at that. My goal is to have purchase cars with equipment, 2 to 3 cars a year, whatever it takes. I don't want to purchase 12 cars in 1 year and then, 8 years, 9 years down the line, the city's up for purchasing 12. That's a big purchase. We're not fixing the problem, we're causing the problem. So my goal is to purchase, cars incrementally as the years go on. But we're moving forward with that. There's a lot of things. You mentioned a lot of great things that it's not just the pay, it's the environment. We provide a family atmosphere. Equipment is important. We also watch out for the liability of the city. Something that we've done was, body worn camera. We were the first city to fully implement the body worn camera system. We have triggers, things like that, having cars with the right equipment, making sure that anything, the equipment with technology, it's user friendly to get our officers back out on the street quick enough to handle those calls. That's all very important. I think makes the job easier and attracts more people here. So there's a lot of things we do. We supervise a lot of our task forces. So we have other agencies, but we supervise them. I think it's very important. It gives our people an opportunity. Hey, there's a goal or something to attain. Having that opportunity and knowing that we're getting the best, we're providing the best service, not only for these other areas, but also for the city of Hemet. So that keeps tabs on that. So there's a lot of things we do to attract. We have collateral assignments just like any other city. We provide that. We try to provide the best training, which is important nowadays, making sure we're up on our training when it comes to post and who oversees what we're doing. So that's where we're at right now. You are very right. It's not just pay, it's your environment and what you've done. So there's a lot of things we've done in the past too with our remodel of our building. The outside may not look pretty, but the inside looks professional. It's a clean, professional environment. So I truly believe in all that. Our professional presence is important. When you show up, you should look professional, and that's what our citizens deserve. So all those statements that you made, I 100% agree, and I think that's the direction we go. And I think we are those are some challenges we have, but we have made a lot of accomplishments on the way.
I appreciate that. I'll just, I keep my vehicles, and all my vehicles are old and I keep them in good shape like you do. I'll just say that from your officers' perspectives that I've spoken with, they feel like their equipment is out of date and the vehicles are out of date. And these are the types of things that I feel like should be brought to the table. I'm wondering, like my fellow member here mentioned, that shouldn't these raises and stuff be coming out of the general fund while we're able to support law enforcement with all these other things, for you to come and say, look, I need these vehicles, I need to make my officers happy and getting the latest updated equipment and that kind of a thing, and improve the safety of the community. And again, I'm not trying to say I oppose any of raises or anything like that. I'm just really trying to come from a perspective of what was this money originally earmarked for. And I keep coming back to, these other things, not necessarily raises. And one of the things that, in here is a one-time compensation for work performed during the COVID pandemic. I mean, didn't the city of Hemet get like $28 million in federal funds? I mean, wouldn't that money be covering something, for your employees who are working during the pandemic instead of taking Measure U money?
Yeah, the proposed funding plan does not include any of the 1.7 does not include any of the use of that for work done during COVID. That would be utilizing ARPA. So
okay,
the 1.
so what's in here then is not necessarily for.
So what you've got primarily that are going to be funded: wages, benefits, deferred compensation. Any sort of the one-time payments related to the work performed during COVID is not scheduled to come out of Measure U. ARPA would be utilizing that.
Okay, thank you.
And if back in, I believe it was January, Lorena, the council approved some payments for work done during the pandemic, and that did come out of ARPA.
Thank you.
Sure.
Can we see, I mean, if you have any comments, Sarah?
No, I don't have any questions at this time.
Not at this time.
A couple things. With the MOU, well, first off, in our recruitment process, do we have incentive bonuses for recruitment? You know, the 10,000, you get hired, you get 10,000, you get 5 now, you get 5 as long as you're around in a year. And if we do have that, is that part of the MOU or is that coming out of general fund? I mean,
Yeah, we
You and
don't
I- you
have
and I
that
know
anymore. We had that at one time, and that was recruitment. To be honest with you, I was there, it was more of a headache than anything else. And I'm glad it's gone, to be honest with you. If you want a
agree.
job in this profession, you know, Mr. Clark, you're gonna pursue it.
I don't know if the rest of being our first meeting together, I spent almost 30 years as a public servant. Started out as a family member, volunteer fire departments, worked my way through what used to be called CDF. And into BLM fire, that's how I got down here. I was at Apple Valley. Then I was in law enforcement just shy of 25 years before I was retired due to injuries. And I'm glad the questions were finally asked because I've been sitting over here just the climate that the law enforcement community went through over the last 2 years has just put a black mark on recruiting. My own academy, a small one up north, we used to get 200, 300 applications for an academy, or anywhere from 46 to 50 positions. They are lucky if they're putting a full academy together. Now, my own son, he followed. He put himself, after he came out of the Army, he put himself through the academy. Started off with a small department. In fact, I didn't even know he was interviewing with Hemick down here. And it was his first interview ever. And you agree with me, your first interview with law enforcement is the worst you've ever done. But because of the climate, he went back to military. You know, when he sat down with us and he said, I know where I stand in the military. With the climate of what's happening right now, which he hadn't, he'll be the second group if they call up more people to go to Europe. His battalion goes. So, but I can understand it. The numbers, we used to trip over each other. When I applied for the Eureka Police Department, there were 3 openings. And that's a very small community, almost up on the Oregon border. I think there was 127 of us applied. And I'm really glad to hear you say that you have not lowered your expectations. The marijuana issue alone, first, how many guys don't peak clean to start with? And I know other departments, I know other probation departments that actually have given numbers. Well, okay, if you've been clean 6 months, we can see you. You can't, in this business, you can't lower. And I appreciate hearing that. I really do. But I get a lot of people out in public asking me the same questions you've been asking. And the elephant in the room, whether we agree with the politics that have gone on over the last couple of years, that is the big reason. When somebody says, you're almost at the same numbers you start out with, why didn't you get me hiring? The younger generation doesn't want to be a cop. I don't know, do you, in the fire business, are you having similar, you still get a lot of applicants, or are you seeing less?
It's less, surprisingly. The fire service is experiencing similar things.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
My seasonal guys can't even put crews together.
Right.
just the level of being watched and second guessed. There's so much of that. And that's what this public needs to be told about. It is hard to get these people to apply. And so many people don't understand the process and how long it is. I mean, my own academy was just under 3 months, but Post continues mandating different things. What are you up to now? 6?
Yeah,
Almost
6
7
months
months?
with all the new learning domains and everything. Because
Yeah.
every year is something else, mental health and stuff. It's, those kind of learning domains get increased. So there's so many different things that we have to then, biggest thing right now is health and wellness of, the swarm. So it continues to increase. So we're at 6 and who knows? There's new laws that are coming out for more training and decertification, and it even gets more difficult. So.
And Chief, it's not like we've only hired 3 people in the last 5 years. I mean, I think you told the former committee at one point you had hired 40 and but lost 40.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it was you, but
No,
I
and,
think it
and, and I believe the next meeting that we're gonna have, we're gonna discuss at least the past year, and maybe one day we could also schedule a tour of the facility, maybe discussion with the Measure U committee where I could provide you a better insight so you actually see what's going on. I'm telling you things, but I'm sure you have questions as you see things. I'm more of a hands-on. I'd love to do that one day, kind of show you what we do on a daily basis, meet those teams, and have that opportunity as well.
And Chris or Lorena, I just want to make sure, because it is in your report and in the resolution and everything, that is this city still meeting the 72% minimum
That's
in
correct.
general fund for public safety?
That's correct.
They still would be even with this 1.2 or
That's correct.
7, I'm sorry, 1.7.
That's correct. The other thing I wanted to add to is Committee Member Clark brought up an incredible point. And I know Chief, when we talk about recruitment and bringing on new folks to our department, one thing that Chief Poos will not do is lower standards, because if you think about the responsibility that our officers have and the power that they're legally allowed to utilize, it's critically important that we don't bring on someone on board that, may have been a problem somewhere else. Or, he may have done, or she may have done this or that, but we'll just look the other way. And that's something that the chief will not do. And so, is it possible to maybe have more than the net officers by bringing on someone that, might be okay, but, might be a question? Absolutely. Is that something that the chief would stand for? And I support him 1,000% on that. Would we want to bring that type of person here? No. So from a perspective of, we can inflate the numbers on maybe people that wouldn't be the best for the department, but we have to look at it from the management side of a potential liability associated with bringing someone on board that isn't at that level that Committee Member Clark brought up. Maybe Chief, you can talk about that.
Oh, it's always, my first thing is obviously liability and servicing the citizens of Hemet, so it's very important. And we haven't lowered our standards. And I don't want to deal 80% of my time with a problem employee. That's not what we're here for. We want to provide good service, and we have to trust these individuals out in the street and dealing with the public. So that's I don't like to stand in front of the press. That's the last thing I want to do. So we make sure that we hire the best of the best. And I think I think across the board, agencies our size sometimes is difficult. Larger agencies, I think that's where we draw the line. It's important to hire the best you can to provide the service to your community. So
Outside of the positions that are currently posted, I'm sure they're posted, right?
mhm.
Are you looking at all to increase the staff, or are you satisfied with where you're at and you feel like Hemet's at a good, safe place right now with the amount of officers that we have right now?
If I could go, I'd hire 150 if I had the opportunity, but I just don't. what we're doing is I have my budget now, and that'll be this discussion we have at the next meeting, is I have 78 positions. I have people with backgrounds, I have laterals and backgrounds that we're gonna fulfill those spots. My goal is to do that prior to the end of this fiscal year. So I would love to hire, when that opportunity arises, where, as we look at the budgets the next couple of years and see what the opportunity is to bring more people on. I also want to be innovative and building our community service officers, building a cadet program. So we have from explorer to cadet to community service officer, because you invest in those individuals and they're going to be vested in our community. Those are the ones we want here. We want those that are vested, that are going to spend the rest of their career here. And I totally believe it. We have explorers that are now officers. I'm sending one to the academy. She's going to do fantastic. She's been an explorer here. She's now a CSO for the past 2 years. So I don't expect any issues. She'll come back and she'll finish the FTO program, but she will be vested. She's born and raised here. That's important to me. And we build that line within the department to hire those and recruit within. So that's our goal. But yes, I want to fulfill the 78 positions I have. And those discussions come during the budget season when we discuss where we at with recruitment for more individuals. I'd like to expand all our teams to work to put more officers on the street 24/7, especially on the busiest time of the day. I think you're never going to take away an officer's presence is a deterrent, 100%. If I could stick one in every corner, I would. But obviously that won't happen anywhere. But yeah, if I could fulfill more than what I have, I would definitely do it. So that's where we're at now. We're at 78 positions. I got 72 hired as of today. I have another chief's oral where I talk to another recruit next week. Hopefully we'll bring him on depending on how his oral goes, and we'll keep climbing until we hit that number. I do have some retirements coming up, so it's I could never predict what's going to happen with resignations, retirements, or if somebody gets hurt. So those are things that we're dealing with all the time. And just like any other business, I don't know of one department that ever said, "Hey, I'm fully staffed." I really don't. I've heard so many things like we were almost there, 2 hours away, and then somebody resigned or something happened. But I think we could hit that mark, and I'm excited to move forward.
Those were old time budgets.
Yeah.
That did that. When I was a rookie, I was one of 2 people that were called overhire positions. So our department knew, there's either guys looking, because I worked in a small department, didn't pay much, guys that were looking elsewhere, or retirements. So we always had 2. And when the budget started getting tight, those were the first 2 that got cut.
So we have the Hemet Gatekeepers. They've been a new business for the last 5 years in Hemet. They have really, in my opinion, and it could go either way. However, when they first started, they were paralleling with the police, and you guys were working with them. They've been able to hire in the last 5 years. They're up to 50 security guards. And that's amazing for a new company for 5 years to get up to close to 50 security guards. Is there any way, and if Measure U helped, because now they're limited. Now they can't do anything. They can just like drive around and call you, So is there any way that there could be some kind of lateral program? Because they're all, most of them do get their license to carry. They do go through the whole process, and security guard and policeman. I'm not trying to parallel you guys. I know there's a lot more. I know there's a lot more to it than that. But my point being is can't we take some of them, because they are more visible in town when you're saying, on those days that you need to be more visible, they are visible. Can't we take some of them, or the ones that have been there and really show an interest in, can't we train them? Can we take them and train them more?
We'll hire anybody. We put recruitment out all the time. It's just there's, there's different criteria for
Right.
security guard and for law
No, but
enforcement.
I'm saying though, keep them in with the Hemet gatekeepers, but train them a little bit more to your side without them actually then having to go to the academy. They chose to be,
It's a major
Yeah.
liability.
I mean, I don't know,
Yeah,
well, I mean, they're already paying liability
Yeah, no,
insurance. I mean,
and-
they're already
and
there.
Here's the thing uh, not really knowing the whole industry of law enforcement. Those are good
Right.
questions because you want more people out on the street, you want protection, their security, and I totally get it, but it's a totally different animal. We work with all our security groups in town. Any way we could be more efficient working with them. They cannot do a lot of things that we do, obviously
Right.
arrest people, their security. They should be called their eyes and ears,
Right.
just like our volunteers. I look similar to that. They're the eyes and ears, so they will call us, we respond. The same thing with security. It's a private, those are private firms. They have to train their own people. If I had the opportunity to continue, to train everybody, I'd train every citizen. We'll arm them and make this a great safe city,
You wouldn't want to see me with
that
a
was
gun,
on-
but
I don't know,
okay.
maybe. But those are the things you're dealing with, so.
I think Sarah has her hand raised to make a comment. Is that right?
Yes. I just have a question. Maybe I missed it, but I'm wondering, so the funds that are being proposed is going for police officers, not community service officers?
That's correct. The proposed MOU is strictly for police officers, association members. And so that group is made up of police corporal, police officers, and police investigators. So just those three employee classifications.
Okay. And are any of the police officers or will any of those new hired police officers be assigned to specific programming, or is it just a general duties? I know some cities have certain officers assigned to maybe like the homeless outreach, or like a homeless outreach team, or just other programming that does provide public safety components. So I'm just wondering is there a designated use for the funds once these police officers are hired using the money?
So if I'm hearing you correctly, is your question of the vacancies that we have now, which function of the police department will they be performing? Was that the question that you had?
Kind of, but using these funds, if this gets approved and this money gets implemented, the 1.7, then that money will go to hire new police officers. But are those police officers going to be assigned for a specific role, or is it general police services?
So
I'll answer that if you don't mind.
yeah, and then just so you know, part of it will be the new employees that come to the city of Hemet will be entitled to the MOU benefits that are within. So that's for attracting new officers. The other component is for retention of officers. So the existing officers that are currently here would also be entitled to those same benefits to help ensure that they stay with the city of Hemet. So
Yeah, and to add to what the city manager mentioned, yes, those positions that are vacant in those areas get kind of backfilled with more senior officers as these new officers come in. And then there's opportunity later on down the road where they have those same opportunities.
And then Chief, maybe it's a good opportunity to talk about the priorities kind of on a broad sense that you've got to make sure that you have patrol out on the streets, but then also you got to be mindful about some of these other enhanced levels of service, rocks. So how do you make those determinations?
Well, for patrol, so everybody's aware, we have a minimum manning. We have at least 5 officers assigned to each shift with 2 supervisors. And that's our minimum manning. We like to run about 6 because you reduce any type of vacation time or having people come on overtime, things like that. People get sick. You're still able to provide the service that we need to for the community. Obviously, I'd like to be 8 and 2 if that's possible, but that's where we're at. But at the same time, we provide all those other services, like our highlights in our strategic plan is our WACS team, that's Restoring Our Community Strategy team. They deal with the homelessness, nuisance, and issues like that. They're pretty much our go-to team. We have our traffic bureau. That's a big cry out by our community because of the traffic. I mean, everybody sees the speeding and traffic violations that occur, those traffic collisions. So we're able to fill those positions as well. Other areas like a crisis intervention team or SIT team, they drive around with a mental health professional to deal with those mental health individuals out in our community that need help, that need assistance, that they can find programs and assistance for them. Other teams that are involved is our so we have school resource officers, we have investigations. There's just so many different programs that we have. Our department alone has 14 programs in our budget, which we have personnel, and 13 of those 14 programs. One of the programs is technology, but yeah, we have different programs where we assign different officers to. If that helps you out with that
Thank
question.
you.
From what I hear, Chief, from you and others, it seems like it's absolutely imperative for the city to retain our current level of police officers. And of course, I would like to hire a lot more too. But, I know that's another whole issue. And I think that it's vital to the community for us to retain these officers, because like you said, it's very, very costly and very timely to have a continuous turnover and hire. And, a new police officer can't even really do the role for a year or so until they're totally trained. And I think it definitely ties back into the 3 strategic plans of the city and the city council. Of course, quality of life, we need safety. And that's what I hear so much about the city. People want to feel safe when they go to the store or go to a restaurant or somewhere. And then I definitely think the community engagement too is vital. And I know that you do that a lot. I know the fire department does too. I've heard from people in Hemet West, Lakes at the West, or whatever it is now, when the fire department's gone down there, and that they're so excited to meet. Everybody loves fire anyway, but
We're talking about police today.
I can't get this guy to stop talking.
and certainly the police at my city youth and everything else that they do. But that's just my thoughts. That it is vital that we retain our current level officers, and it's such a challenge to hire now. So I don't know if we need have any more discussion or we want to take action. Are there any other comments?
So I have a question to you is, so then you're feeling that Measure U should just fund it all? That's what I just understood, like that 1.7 million. This money, like they were saying, isn't gonna be here forever if the city doesn't vote this back in. And I think that probably has a little bit to do with you being able to hire people. They see that there might be an end to the money because there's a cap on it. That didn't help when people come in and go, oh yeah, I want to be a policeman in Hemet, and they show that they have all this money and they're doing all this stuff, but wait, that money might go away, and so do I really want to invest my time if I see, 6 years down the road that they might not have any money, that might go away. And so I can see where the problem is, but I don't feel that Measure U should fund the police. I'm not saying that, but also to the city. It's not just a big budget for all this money to just get spent everywhere. And I go back to, I know it wasn't put in a special fund, and I know it's just not there for police and fire, but technically it should be. But I also think that too, at one time, the city did also pitch in and pay their part. And the way I hear this is that it's that they want us to pay for their
their retirement and that I don't think, I mean, the city used to pay for their retirement. That's part of their budget. That's why they budget that. But now it seems to me like we're kind of implementing that into this 1.7 and I don't see how we should be able to, why we should be able to pay for their retirement.
And that, to build on that, that was
Right.
one of my notes that I had too about ongoing expenditures based on, I don't know if this is one-time money. I don't know if we're talking fund balance, if we're talking about the the Measure U fund coming in. But there definitely is a sunset in 5 years. So I don't know if you know or the
Well,
manager.
and in addition to what you said, this is from July 1, 2021, so we're we would be
Right,
retro paying
exactly.
them for a year, right? And then, so it ends in 2024. So then what? And I'm wondering if that $1.7 million, is that gonna take away from the other things that maybe he's going to need? Maybe he needs new vehicles, maybe he needs new equipment, maybe he wants to add more officers. Like that 1.7, if we commit that, then how do we offer, because there's a limited amount of money, so how do we offer to meet the rest of the needs if we're funding retirements and keeping the budget?
So here's a couple things. Obviously, that's what the council's there for. They make the policy decisions on behalf of the city. There are every single department outside of public safety has large needs too. The fact of the matter is that as management, we make recommendations on what the best use of funding is given the limited resources. So that's a dilemma that we grapple with every single day. And for those of you that didn't have a chance to look at it, Chief Sell was talking about this just a few weeks ago about the fire department and the critical needs that are there. I would say that there's upwards of $15 million of just facility needs in just the fire department. That's more funding that's available for Measure U for all of that. Even if you took all the money that was in Measure U, you wouldn't have enough to deal with the fire department items. So the fact of the matter is the needs will always exceed what the budget is. But as management, I rely on Chief Poos to make his recommendations on what should be prioritized in the department. I rely on Chief Sell to make recommendations on what should be prioritized in the fire department. And we bring those forward to the city council. And the city council weighs in on those policy decisions. Now, with that being said, the discussion related to this issue at hand is more narrow and more refined. So whether the committee supports whether there is funding utilized for fire engines or police vehicles or police equipment or police salaries, wages, or benefits. If we go back to the key questions for the committee, based on what the scope of the committee outlined in Ordinance 1918, the key question isn't whether the committee believes the council should or shouldn't approve it. The question is really about, is it in line with the resolutions that have been adopted by the council as well as Ordinance 1918? That's not to say that your input isn't valuable, but if we look at what the scope of the Oversight Committee is set out to do, the key question related to the 3 questions for the committee, the first one being, are wages, benefits, and deferred compensation eligible expenses under resolutions 4731 and 4703 related to public safety employees? So if we bring back the conversation related to, okay, what is it that the committee is tasked with reviewing and providing input on? Those are the first few questions that the council's looking to get input and feedback on, if that makes sense, on where we're looking to get some feedback from the committee, because that is the scope that the Oversight Committee is tasked with.
Sure, and I would take it a step further, that we are tasked as community members to stand up for what the community asked for. And the community asked for us to, based on all the information, to enhance the police and fire department
And Hemet has spelled out in these resolutions of what that maybe looks like, including, supporting if fire needs, something. That money is used to enhance where maybe the city wouldn't have it. And that's if we give them a new fire engine, the fire engine gets paid for and it's done deal, right? But if we, do something and it ends in 3 years or 4 years, 2024, then we've just put demands upon Measure U, which we don't even know that we can continue funding or continue. So I guess what I'm trying to do is go back to what did the community ask for us to do in these resolutions?
Yeah, and I would go back to what the ordinance stipulates what the committee is tasked with, because that's the scope and the responsibility of the committee. And that's embedded in the backup, Ordinance 1918, which specifically articulates the roles and the responsibility of the Oversight Committee. Not to say that maybe those other items that you are considering, how that plays into all of this, not to minimize that. But if we look at what the task and the responsibility of the Oversight Committee is, I'm looking at straight at the ordinance of what the Oversight Committee is tasked with. That's what I'm looking at.
I gotta tell you, what you're grappling with right now was my biggest problem when I came to Measure U. Because I thought input, I knew I wasn't a council member, so I couldn't vote for something, but I thought there was a lot more input that could be done, and there is. Our opinions matter, but we have a lot of citizens that come to us, we pass it on. But what he's just said, as an oversight committee, we are here to make sure that what is being done follows what was passed in the ordinance and the resolutions. And after that, ask Chris. I'm a pain in the to him.
I like talking to you.
We've talked about having coffee for the last year, but I sent some very pointed questions and emails to him. And it's without this approval of this type of thing, the council has a hard time with then telling other people how to do. Now, I am on Measure U because I came from a place where the city council was using all the money with a fund very similar to Measure U. They called it Measure G, and they're using the money right and left. And that's why I said I want to be here on Hemet's Measure U. I want to make sure that doesn't happen. And it was a hard pill to swallow when I first came on, that we were here as kind of overseers to make sure. But you can see, there wasn't that much to be presented to us today. If it wasn't for the discussions we've had, and believe it or not, this is a short meeting. We could have, I think 4.5 was the longest I remember. We could have been out of here a long time before, but every one of us are bringing stuff to this because we want more for the city. I don't know if what I just said makes sense. I feel you that when you're first coming on, to be able to look at this and go, hey, I don't want to, out of the 1.7, I don't want to pay for that. If you don't think it's within the resolutions and the law, then we for sure pointed out. One of us asked about the COVID, and that's when we found out, okay, that one-time payment isn't part of the Measure U. Okay, I was a lot happier with that. Because I already had that circle and the copy I have at home circled too, because I didn't bring it. Other than that, I mean, there's more discussion. I mean, we have three things here that we're asked. You know, are the wages, benefits, and deferred comp eligible under the resolutions for public safety employees? And I believe they are.
Yeah, I agree with that. 4703 on page 3, section 3A specifically talks about not limited to, but including wages, benefits, and deferred compensation for police and fire personnel. Again, whether we agree with it or not, our scope is very, very narrow, just like Dick said. You know, our scope as the oversight committee, we basically have 2 duties. So, but maybe
And the
Alden and I
number-
can be labor negotiators next time. I've got a lot of experience.
You know, and the number 2
I don't mean to
thing,
be a pain in the butt.
No,
or
no, no,
anything,
you're not,
Guys,
you're
I'm
not,
just
you're not.
trying to ask questions and, you know.
the number 2 thing is the 1.7 million. You know, is that in line with the ordinance and the resolutions? Now, doing it this way is different than what I saw in the last 2 years. You know, we had discussions, you know, can we increase it, measure you for here? Can we, this is, in my opinion, and in working within law enforcement, to be able to plan for 2 to 3 years that they has that money, I'm in favor of it. You know, it's not that the city's not putting in something out of the general fund. The 72%, the city, the minimum, the city's got to do that. And then after that, after we see, or when we meet on Monday, will that, by that time, will the MOU be public or not?
No, that will be public next Thursday. That's when the agenda gets posted. So we're hopeful that the MOU and all those details are hammered out by then. The formalized language for it.
Okay, that's too bad, because that would probably make Monday's meeting a lot easier.
But on Monday's meeting, what the committee will be tasked with reviewing, because the council already received and filed the annual comprehensive financial report for fiscal year 2020, 2021, that was the first step. Next Monday, we'll be reviewing that with the committee so that you all can see the things that PD and fire spent in fiscal year 2020, 21, get the audited numbers, as well as a secondary review by a separate auditor. That's what you'll be discussing a week from today.
So if there's other questions or not, I'm not trying to.
No. I mean,
I would make a motion that we authorize the chair and vice chair to sign a letter affirming that these questions 1 and 2 are agreed, that we find that they are eligible under the resolutions and the ordinance. Make that motion.
do we have any discussion or a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. John? Paul?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So we have a motion by committee member Clark and a second by committee member Chanel. I'll go through a roll call. Committee member Darwin,
Yes.
committee member Clark,
Yes.
committee member Thames, excuse me,
Yes.
committee member Chanel,
Yes.
vice chair Cortez de Pavon,
Yes.
chairwoman Cosma.
Yeah.
That motion passes 5-0. A motion that you authorize the questions 1 and 2 to be signed and are eligible under the resolutions 4731 and 4703 and the ordinance mentioned in the staff report 1918.
and authorizing the chair and the vice chair to sign a letter on behalf of the committee to the council.
Will the city draft something?
We'll draft something up. We'll work with the vice chair and the chair to ensure that the language is as you're comfortable with.
And I know this is, you know, definitely a great conversation that we've had because we haven't had a chance to meet before. But to me, it's just absolutely imperative that we remain competitive, the police department, or we're gonna even lose more officers. Oh, are there any more comments?
What's the time for Monday's meeting?
Oh, goodness. I don't know off the top of my head. Let me pull up my calendar.
It doesn't say it on the agenda here.
I've got a hold on my calendar for 4:30.
4:30 is correct.
Yeah.
Yes,
And here,
Same place.
same place.
okay.
And we'll make the Zoom available for anybody else that prefers that as well.
We have a motion to adjourn. Second,
I'll second.
Motion by committee member Tamez and committee member Chenault, committee member Daron. I'll go through a roll call.
Oh, yes.
Committee member Clark,
Yes.
committee member Tamez,
Yes.
committee member Chenault,
Yes.
vice chair Cortez de Pavon,
Yes.
chairwoman Cosma.
Yes.
That motion passes to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you. We'll see you all
Thank you,
next
everybody.
week.
Yeah, thank you.
We're so fresh.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, you know, Monday.